But by the end of the show, we all came to the conclusion that no, that's not true. You don't have to bend the knee. However, someone brought the show's attention to one of the guys in CG, and he spurred out about it. He hated the fact that that's what we called our show. He called us jealous. He said, "You're only doing that for attention." And it's like, yeah, no shit. That's what you want on YouTube is everybody's attention, right?
Do you feel continually let down by modern media? Do you miss the good old days, back when all that mattered was a good story and not some agenda? Do you have ambitions of picking up a pen and pad and fighting the creative war yourself? Then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'm going to talk to a creator who said enough is enough and started making the content they wished was out there. Join us as we discuss the ups and downs of the self-publishing world. We want to help empower you to join the Iron Age of media. Welcome to Iron Age Marketing. Welcome everyone to another episode of Iron Age Marketing. I am Nicky P, here as always. Today's guest is Dojo, comic book creator. Why don't you introduce yourself and we'll start this journey, because today's going to be a wild one, I have a feeling.
I think you're right. So, yeah, the comic book company that I own and operate is Dojo Kun Comics. My name is Brian Menard. I do it as a side gig. During the day, I'm a certified fraud examiner, a certified internal auditor, and a certified anti-money laundering specialist. So my day job, it's stressful at the beginning of the week because I do anti-money laundering reports, but then in the evenings, I get to work on comic books. I've been publishing comic books for about 10 years now under the Dojo Kun banner, and I've been collecting comics for over 50 years now. So I've got some, yeah, I've got some great comic books from both the silver and bronze age to try to emulate. I'd say the gold standards, and I doubt anybody would argue with me on this, would be Chris Claremont and John Byrne during the Uncanny X-Men era, and then Marv Wolfman and George Perez during the New Teen Titans. I think those are the gold standards, and I try to emulate those guys.
Now, I'm just curious, is there any crossover between being a fraud examiner to like the type of stories perhaps that you are drawn to or that you work with in comics?
Well, I think the ones that have intrigue where there is multi-layered crimes, not just a straight up, hey, I'm going to break into this bank and take what's in it, but where there's strategic, machinations going on behind the scenes. I love the ones that get sort of deep in the weeds. The crossover, though, to be honest with you, goes in the other direction, and that is early this year, I did a presentation to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners called The Bad Guys, Fraud and Money Laundering in the Comic Book Industry. And it was very vague. I didn't call out anybody in particular, but I just talked about some of the ways that those things can occur. And notably, because a lot of the first appearances of some of the big names in the comic books are going for millions now. And that's getting up into the fine art realm as far as money goes. So criminals are looking to perhaps buy and flip comic books as a way to give legitimacy to their ill-gotten gains. It's only, in my opinion, getting the eyes of money launderers because of how much some of them are worth now.
I know that obviously they had the CGC issue where people were getting things. I can't remember the exact thing, but they were either things that shouldn't have been graded what they were, or somebody was paying someone to grade things that maybe weren't legitimate books even.
Yeah, I had Incredible Hulk number 181, and I was tempted to send it in there to get it graded, but I don't think there's any way to assure the one you send is the one you're going to get back. I was really reluctant to send it. I did end up selling it, but it was not a graded book. I think I did okay, but I probably could have done better if I got it graded, but I was just too nervous about getting the same one back.
Well, anytime you can't guarantee a chain of custody, I mean, that's
Right,
there's a
exactly.
lot of red flags to that one for me.
Exactly.
I ran a bank vault for a couple of years there, and it's not something that you can let happen with valuable things. Like, you know where they are at all times.
Yeah, I didn't want that out of my sight.
The reason that we brought you on is because when we were talking initially, you were promoting a current run of books, and the end result was you realized that despite your history, your previous sales on books, for whatever reason, these were just not going to hit the marks that had been hit in the past. There's a variety of reasons we can point for that. But what the story to me really screamed was those two letters, the bane of existence to so many creators in the comic book space, and that's CG. So, why don't you kind of tell the story, I guess, for what that means to you? Or maybe you want to start from the beginning of how you got involved there in the first place. What was the mindset that drew you to there?
Yeah, I think that is a good place to start. So I was on Facebook more than Twitter at the time. This was a few years back, like back in 2020. And I was posting some of my characters there saying, hey, what do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? And there was a person who said to me, hey, you probably don't want to do that until these characters are published. And I said, oh, they are published. As a matter of fact, I've been publishing for a few years now. At that point, it had been 6 years. And so I told him that, I've got a website and comic books that I published. He said, oh my gosh, you're a comic creator already, not just a character creator. He said, you really should start watching some of these shows that are related to the group you alluded to, CG. Now, at the time, I knew nothing about CG, never even heard of it. So I looked at Wikipedia, and as I read the Wikipedia article there, it seemed pretty biased against CG.
A collection of Nazis doing Nazi things with their Nazi colored books.
It was over the top to the point where I doubted its accuracy. So, unfortunately, I should have seen a grain of truth there. But anyway, I went to a show. At the time, it was called Late Night with ComicsGate, and it's run by a guy named Michael Bancroft. And I went into his chat. Didn't use the name Dojo Kun at the time. I used my real name. And everybody there was super welcoming. Hey, welcome to the chat. Good to have you here. I said a few things like I just said to you that I've been publishing for a while. And everybody was very supportive and welcomed me there. Michael himself, as the host, saw me in the chat, started talking sort of to me as a chat member. And it was a great welcome to the community, in my opinion. And that went on for a while, almost a year, where I was in his chat every time he went live, which at the time was 5 nights a week. So I became a part of that group, just sort of connecting with the people in his chat. I branched out, started watching a few other shows. Otten Stuff was another one with Joe Sontag and Sean Arendt, also a couple of great guys. I was encouraged to take the 4-issue miniseries that I had created called Siamese and make it a trade paperback and see if I couldn't get that crowdfunded. The group was such a welcoming community and all that, that in fact it funded in 3 days. And the trade paperback to Siamese was fulfilled, funded and fulfilled in 2021 slash early 2022. So that went on for a while. That it was a welcoming community. I had some initial success there. That book, I think, broke even. And I think that the cautionary tip I can give you there is be careful with international shipping. I think it's the international shipping that bit me in the ass, because it was like $35 just to ship it across the river here to Canada. So I mean, uh, Canada is close enough that I could take it there my damn self and not use the post office. But anyway, yeah. So international shipping was what bit me there. So in 2022, I started working with a co-host, and we had a show, the Key Manifesto show with Dojo Kun Comics. And the reason we did that was we had both learned that in order to build your audience in the indie comic community, you need to have a YouTube presence. It really felt that way anyway. So we had that show going for over a year. Then he wanted to step out of the camera lens, even though he wanted to still produce a show. So I went on for a short lived show called The Co host Show. And what I did was I would invite co hosts from other shows to be my co host. And that lasted for a little while. And then finally, I came up with the show called Incendiary. And that one there was ostensibly a 30 minutes of a debate, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the last 30 minutes, we would talk about our guests' comic book that they had a crowdfunder, live. So the first half, though, we would have a debate, and it was intentionally clickbaity, and we were never shy about saying that. What we would say is something like, do women belong in comics? And, the reason that was clickbaity is the woman, or the creator who was on that show, was a woman. It was Carissa Grant that night. So, obviously we didn't think that women didn't belong in comics. We just talked about that. What we did was we set it up such that the guest would pick a side of the debate, and then they would select which of our co-hosts, because there was four of us, would be on her team and who would be debating against her. By the end of the show, the debate itself would all fall apart. We'd say, of course, women belong in comics. Our guest is a woman in comics, and we'd list a few other people. We'd say, now there perhaps are several women specifically who don't belong in comics, like Heather Antos, at the time Gail Simone, and Sudaconic. What's Kelly Sudaconic? Yeah, Kelly Sudaconic. So we said maybe those three don't, but overall, of course, women are welcome in comics, and that would sort of be how the debate would end up. So on our show in October of last year, so 2023, we had a topic called, and here's where it gets incendiary, okay? We had a topic called Bend the Knee or You're Not CG. So we were implying that if you didn't fall in line with what the quote leaders of CG wanted you to do, that they would cancel you or kick you out. Now, again, that was clickbaity to incite a response, right? We ended up with our show. The guest said, no, that's silly. That's not true. You don't have to bend the knee. And he picked a couple people to debate with him. And then a couple of us debated against him, saying that, yeah, that is true. But by the end of the show, we all came to the conclusion that, no, that's not true. You don't have to bend the knee. However, someone brought the show's attention to one of the guys in CG, and he spurred out about it. He hated the fact that that's what we called our show. He called us jealous. He said, "You're only doing that for attention." And it's like, yeah, no shit. That's what you want on YouTube, is everybody's attention, right?
That's marketing. That's the whole point.
That's the whole point. And we were never shy about being clickbaity. We do that on purpose. And at the beginning of our show, we put up a disclaimer. It's got clown music in the background, but basically it says the views expressed on this show are meant for entertainment purposes and don't necessarily reflect the views of the people expressing them. In other words, this is a staged debate. And by the end of the show, again, we said, no, there is no such thing as bending the. However, the person that spoke out about it proved, in fact, that if you do step out of line, he will try to cancel you. So it was like you're proving the fake premise of the show. And so that section of our show was 30 minutes long. Okay. He EFAP'd that 30-minute segment for 2.5 hours the next night. He and one of his sycophants just trashed our show. You guys are terrible. I can't believe you would say such a thing. That's not even true. Crapped all over my comic book, which was live at the time, called Projectile Reptile, which, by the way, funded and got fulfilled, despite his
Fun name.
thanks, despite his having that issue. So, and then on Saturday night, there's another show called The Chat, who recognized that he was reacting to something that wasn't even the case. Like we weren't really saying that, but then again, he proved that fake premise to be true. So it was that basically started the schism between he and I. And he is a well-known name who's been in the industry for like 30 years. And when it comes to comic books, I'm really a nobody. I mean, yeah, I've been publishing for 10 years, but my name is not a household name like his. I'm not all over the Wikipedia page at all. So I don't for a moment, though, blame that schism for what's going on with my comic right now. I really don't think that that is the problem. So I'm not trying to say that his disapproval is what caused this comic book campaign to fail. I don't want anyone to think that. I think that we were talking about this before we started the show, and that is that one thing you need to do if you're getting into this indie industry is to try not to fall into any specific niche or into with any specific group. Pro or con CG, I think it's a bad idea until you get to know people on either side, until you get to know if there even needs to be a side. And unfortunately, there are folks who, if they see you're involved with CG, it's like a red flag or I will absolutely not work with you. In fact, I had at least one, if not two, creatives that I had hired to work with me who bailed mid-project when they learned that I had anything to do with CG. So they breached contract technically, but I don't know how I'm going to pursue that. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where you've got to part ways.
Famous mob killings and pay more in lawyers than you get out of them ever.
Right. So, you know, obviously I just pivoted and picked a different artist and a different colorist. But yeah, so it's a huge stigma, unfortunately, because there are people who ruin it for the rest. Now, I will call out specific names when I say that there are people that are involved that I still think are fantastic and community ambassadors. One, of course, is Michael Bancroft, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, but there are others who are actually industry pros. Rini Sturkel, she is a former industry pro, and I think she's great. She's been on my show a number of times. Aaron Lepresti and his wife Shelley are great people. I love talking to them. And in fact, when we did that show, Kevin and I, you know, years back, the K Manifesto show, we had a show called The Wives of CG, and we literally invited Laura Chin, Don Chin's wife. We had Shelley Lepresti on. My wife Deanna was on the show. We had Michael Bancroft's wife on. We actually did that twice, and we had a total of 8 wives come on the show. So that was a lot of fun. So, you know, there are great people in the group. Unfortunately, it's the ones that are the most vocal, the ones that are the biggest train wrecks that get all the attention. And unfortunately, that is, you know, what people from the outside see, and that really puts a huge stigma on the group.
So I make no bones about like how I've generally, at least from a guy who buys comics, when I look at CG for the past, what it boiled down to me is it looked like I'm saying it all the time now. I'm just too tired to remember it. It's an EVS buyers club is what it's always felt like to me, and it's because they've set up this situation where the CG kings, as they would be. And this is why I don't want to blame them on like a comic book not being successful, but it's very difficult to find as many eyes as they have and shift them to a project as dedicatedly as that group does. You said some of those guys are live streaming every single day, and they do have their audience. And so, Royce, over yeah, he does his damnedest to turn people on to stuff. But there's a big difference between the reach that he has and what a lot of those CG creators do. And so just by not being one of the people that they focus on and choose to uplift, just the volume of people that are even going to ever see what you do is severely diminished. It's like a lot of in marketing we talk about, like, why do you get people to your email list? Well, it's because you don't own Twitter, you don't own Facebook, and their algorithms can change whenever they want, and they can kick you off whenever they want. So the only thing that you can ever own as far as like being able to contact and communicate to people is your email. It's get always get things something that you control, because it's always playing on borrowed time when you're in somebody else's sandbox. And so much of the sandbox, it's like I understand. It's like, oh, if I can get in there, like, it's so many eyes on me. It's so many more chances to make a buck. Are you if you're not finding some way to kind of claim all those people as your own, build the list with all those names that pay, like, and keeping them within your circle as opposed to another circle, you know, I would say, are you emailing them at least once a week? All those types of people to keep them engaging with you and forcing yourself to kind of be a center of a conversation with that audience. It's just going to be near impossible to create the zeitgeist that they create over in that space. So, from my perspective, that's so much of what I see. Is that a good way of putting it, or is it? Do you think it's more than that, less than that?
I think that is largely true, but I think there's actually a little bit more to it as well. And that's because a lot of the guys you're referring to, they're doing this for a living. Okay, this is their bread and butter. And if in fact this were to dry up, unfortunately, this is their, you know, this is the way they put food on the table. Whereas for me, it's a side gig. You know, as I told you earlier, certified fraud examiner, anti-money laundering specialist, that's what I do to make money to pay the bills. So this comic book thing, you know, the first one broke even, the second one probably lost a little bit, you know, and that kind of thing I can't sustain, but it's okay if it fails. I mean, I'm sorely disappointed that it fails, but it's not going to harm me if it does, you know? Whereas those guys, they've got a lot more skin in the game. I was on my show that one night, I was saying that, you know, EVS has been in the comic book industry for 30 years now. I've been a fraud examiner for 30 years. And as I was saying that, what I was alluding to is the comic book fans don't care about that, right? They really don't. I think that his co-host that night said, "Yeah, those credits don't transfer here, bitch." It's like, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is that those credits in anti-money laundering don't matter to the comic book fans, but to those guys, you know, you say they stream every night, they put a lot into it, and they can afford to because it matters that much to them. And I can tell you this: back in early 2023, EVS invited me to his back room, his DM group, and I thought, oh, this is cool. I'm at the cool kids table, right, with all these pros. What I saw happening there was somebody like, let's say, Billy Tucci would say to the group, "Hey guys, I've got this campaign coming out. I'm going to tweet about it this afternoon. It would be awesome if you guys could all retweet that to your audience. Although there's a lot of crossover, you might reach some eyes that I wouldn't." So he would ask that, and everybody would say, you know, "Thumbs up, I got your back, Billy, no worries." And they would all retweet his post. Well, I asked for the same thing in that group, and the only one who retweeted what I posted was Mike Barron. And Mike Barron consistently would do that for me and try to get eyes on my project. But he's the only one. So I said to the group in the DMs, not a blast on Twitter, but just in the back room, I said, "Hey guys, it would be great if you had my back too." Well, apparently EVS took umbrage with that, and he baited me on Twitter into an argument about whether or not they should have my back. And he said, "I baited this guy," and he went right for it. And yes, I did. I'll be honest. I didn't know it was him. I thought it was one of his warehouse workers or something. I was naive. But so he was super rude in that Twitter exchange. And I said, "Are you serious? Have a nice day." Like it occurred to me that this was ridiculous. Well, he then said, my response was actually, "Oh, yeah, fuck you." Well, I did not say that. I said, "Have a nice day." He's a drama tuber, and that's really what he wants to do, is stir up trouble and create his enemy du jour. So it was my turn to be his enemy. That too is what prompted him to spurg out about that show, "Bend the Knee or You're Not CG." So yeah. if if he doesn't if he doesn't want eyes on your project, he can turn all of CG away. I'm not going to say against you, but away.
Well, they don't have to be against you. Listen, they don't have to be against you if they're not paying attention. I mean, the whole point is about garnering attention, and when that attention goes away, it doesn't matter if they love you, hate you, they don't know you exist anymore, and that's the issue.
Yes. One person said to me, the only reason he did that is he sees you as a threat. And I absolutely 100% disagree with that. I am no threat to any of those comic book pros. However, the point that that makes is his crapping on my stuff actually is all the more cruel because I am no threat. You know, I think that what he's doing is just for drama. Now, for a minute there, I thought, what if this was intentional kayfabe? What if he's doing that in order to put more eyes on me? Yeah, to draw more attention. I'm like, could he be doing that on purpose to benefit me? But no, I don't see it that way. I think it's just a way for him to get the people who want to see a train wreck to watch his show.
I mean, the kayfabe thing, I mean, if you wanna play pro wrestling and and do that, by all means, like, I just know that it takes a very particular type of constitution to do that. Because, I mean, especially, like, if this is your thing and it's your emotions get tied up in your art, and I don't care even if it's, like, if it's play to you guys, those people on either side, it's not play to them necessarily. Like, it starts out as a goon, but next thing you know, it's like, well, there's these people that just want me dead, and they think I'm the worst thing that's ever fucking happened. And how much of that can you watch and deal with emotionally, even if it's kind of a joke, even if it's pro wrestling?
It gets out of hand. It really does. There are people who don't see it for that, if that's even what it is. And, you know, it's also a lot more time and energy than I've got because it's not my day job. For them, if streaming for 4 hours a day is how they make their money, some of them get some significant super chats while they're streaming for 4 hours. he made enough to make my car payment. You know what I mean? In one night. So I I don't know if I fault them for the streaming, but at the other hand, it's the constant need to create that drama that takes away, in my opinion, from the craft.
Well, and as much of the drama I mentioned in our conversation before we start going, it's Ripa. And I guess that is the one thing that I will kind of give the CG guys a little bit of a pass on, is that for a very long time, he was more than happy to milk the drama and more than happy to, as monetize your haters, as he puts it. But I think after a certain point I think that him trying to take on the big boy task of having an actual comic book company and not just a crowdfunding thing, when he saw like, oh shit, I'm paying people salaries now. Like people, if I screw this up, lives are on the line, families like that are taken care of. I think, of course, he's as we said, he's a much younger guy than I think most people realize. 'Cause he's a very masculine man, the big beard. He looks like an older dude that I know he is. I think there was a big, or at least a fair amount of growing up that happened, and you realize I don't have the energy or the time to deal with this crap. I mean, yeah, there was a point in time when it worked, and so he kind of rewrote the type of position that he was okay with having in the middle of the game to a lot of people. His monetize your haters mentality shifted to more like, I don't have time for drama, talk shit if you wanna. And I can't blame the guy for doing that. I mean, to me, that seems the smarter move. But like I said, he kind of rewrote the script for a lot of people when he did it.
It was a sudden turn. You're probably right there. But you're right. If he's going to be serious about this business, you need to step away from the drama and get back to the making of the comic books. And I think that a lot of people are recently pointing to that. Like, hey, are you a comic book creator? Or are you a drama tuber? Because it seems like you can't be both. And I don't dispute that. I really don't think you can be both. You've got your passion needs to be in one or the other. If you're going to be a comic book creator and crank out the comic books on a regular schedule, or at least as often as you can, based on your other responsibilities and priorities, then that's what you need to focus on. And I don't know which one provides more income, but honestly, it's the comic books themselves that are my passion. As a collector for more than 50 years, I'm not a drama tuber. In fact, because all this was going on, I canceled my show. I don't do my show anymore because I don't have the energy. I'm not the kind of person that wants the kayfabe. So yeah, if in fact that's even what it was, that's not my passion. My passion is making the comic books.
Well, and that's another thing. Aside from like the logistics of how that whole thing is and the drama they can set up, there is a real issue, I personally think, with pretending that there's not a life cycle on the crowdfunded model.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
The idea that people are going to endlessly like comic book collecting isn't the thing it was in the 90s. Expecting all of these books to fetch higher and higher prices and be worth, bucks to pay. There's been a lot of goodwill that I think is kind of gets eaten up a little bit more as time goes on within those communities. And a lot of that goodwill exists because of some of the political elements in the world today. Or maybe we thought these people were unfairly, kicked out of their positions within like proper society and they deserve some of this, or, you know, I'm willing to pay a premium for content that I specifically want. But the bottom line is like there's people putting out 30-page books and you're paying 20, 25 bucks on these things. You're like, this this is a $3, $4 book on the shelves, guys. I can't. Prices are inflated. And it's not like any of these books are things that are going to have collector's value in the future. That's why people get so pissed about Ripa and he'll have these sales and like lowers prices on books. It's like, well, it's because he understands the long game is that if we want to keep this being successful, you can't be charged 25 bucks for every book. Eventually, you're paying the 25 bucks maybe here to have early access before the rubes get it. And that's to me a part of the economics. I think the video game industry is actually what screwed this up because I'm sorry, when you release a new video game system, it should cost $5,000 and you're only going to make 10 of them. But those 10 that you make that go to those people that had to have it the day it was released is what's going to make sure that every kid in the country has one later on. And then buys the same game. It's like, sure, those people only pay $300 for the system because it was front loaded the cost on the early adopters. But then that also means so many more people get to enjoy the games and spend money on the games because you've built up a much bigger ecosystem by allowing that to happen. And that's more of what I see with what Ripa's doing is you want to wait 2 years for me to sell it for $5? Go ahead. This is what the early adoption price is. This is what it costs to help this thing continue to grow.
Well, that's another good point that you're making there, and that is that crowdfunding, you're not actually paying for the, based on the description and the definition of crowdfunding, you're paying for the production of the book, and your thank you is you get the end product, the book. So it's, you're not actually paying for the product. And that the reason I agree with you that that's not sustainable issue after issue after issue is that if I wanted to collect a comic book title like I had been historically, I don't expect these guys to get them out monthly, but each month I would buy a comic book at, let's say today's prices, what are they, $5.99, so $6 a pop.
Some of my Spawn titles are literally $4.
There you go. So $4, and I'm not even going to say anything about the regularity of them, so that it's monthly. Okay, I get why they're not in the industry because I've been a creator for a while. I know it takes a lot longer for those of us who don't have the the economy of scale.
What was it that Joe Benitez puts out? Lady Mechanic, I think that's what his name is, and he does a run that'll like go 4 books, and then you won't hear from him for a year, and then he'll put out the next story. You'll have a monthly releases for 4 months, and then it'll be a year or two. I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me to collect those books, but it's you know give me the regularity. Let me know the story's coming. Things like that. It's
Yeah. So the time between releases is a problem in crowdfunding. And also, too, the idea that, like you alluded to earlier, paying $25 per issue plus shipping, it becomes more than a lot of people can afford because there's,
but Dojo, you get a bunch of stickers and this poster, and this alternate cover.
don't forget the bookmarks.
I've seen it. By the way, that's a good way to give value for people are overpaying for a product. The problem is that like you're starting to see it certainly when we're heading into a downturn with the actual economy. People are like, look, I don't know how many more of these books I can spend 25. I have drawers full of bookmarks and stickers I don't give a crap about. I'm happy to support people, but like, come on, guys. Is this how this is going to work? And the reason it functions like this because there is no ecosystem, thanks to Diamond for the 50 years or whatever it is, and like the actual production, publication, and promotion of books. There is no system to do that. That's why I'm a big fan of like just the idea of the Iron Age movement. People that are trying to create that alternate ecosystem. You know, sure it starts with the creators, but eventually guys like me kind of creep in and slime ball our way into helping you market books. There's going to be, we need more people getting into the printing and the publishing and things like that of the books, which I think Rip was one of the first people to start trying to focus on that side of things. Is he done everything perfect? No, but once again, young kid who's learning.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea how young he was till you told me before the show. I mean, shoot, I'm old enough to be his dad.
Absolutely. So you're watching what is a whole ecosystem that needs to be created and slowly is. Now, is crowdfunding and the whole like CG system that's been created, is that able to withstand long enough to where the actual architecture of the system ecosystem can be built without that kind of caving in? That I don't know about. I mean, to me, when I look at like Twitter, look at the internet, that whole system seems to be imploding faster as the days go.
Indeed. Yeah, I agree.
There are, like you said, there's still a lot of good people over there, and there is still, you know, maybe at least a kernel of what it was intended to be at the beginning is still there.
There are still some projects that I think are worthy of crowdfunding backing, but looking at the big picture, we all have a finite amount of money that we can put like disposable income toward our comic book collecting. And there was a time where I would back not just the books I thought were great, but the creators I thought were great. And there was a time where it occurred to me, I can't keep that up. It's got to, something's got to give. So I started being very, very picky about I'm not just going to back this because I like the guy. I'm going to back it because it's a product I want. Because, 10 years from now, is that something I'm going to want to go back and read? Am I going to be glad that I collected it? Or is it just, oh, yeah, I remember I thought that guy was nice? You know what I mean? That
Well, and ultimately, I'll stand by this. You're not doing that creator any favors by doing that, because at some point they're going to have to rely on their audience and the people that want that. And the more we give sympathy purchases, the more we try and help our friends out, the more we skew their understanding of what their audience is. If 100 people buy your book because, oh, it's a sympathy and I like him, he's a nice guy. Okay, you might get a book or two out of him, but eventually you're not helping build your fan base, the people that love your creation and are going to ride or die with that creation.
So honestly, I think that's what we're seeing right now in this crowdfunding campaign that I've got live. It's called Dojo Kun Chronicles, and there's less than, let me see, I'm looking at the calendar here. There's like a week left. Okay, it would take a Christmas miracle to get that funded. And I recognize that. I'm not laughing at it. I'm actually sorely disappointed. But by the same token, it's definitely a lesson. And one of the reasons you and I wanted to talk tonight was to tell people that that's exactly what you're saying. Maybe the people who backed Siamese and Projectile Reptile were at the beginning people who maybe like my persona, wanted to give me a chance at the beginning. But now that I'm putting out this anthology, maybe that interest has waned. And I blame nobody. I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault. I'm just saying that this may be what you're describing happening in real life right now, in real time.
It's just a distortion in the market. Things happen for this reason. And maybe this is a hard question. Would it have made more sense for you as a creator to kind of keep to yourself, find your own audience, and have like a realistic understanding of who your people like really are versus, getting the all those eyes on you? Would it have helped even as far as your growth as a creator to like spend more time kind of going through that hardship phase?
The thing is, when you say keep to yourself, I think that, that's a suicide as far as marketing goes, because keeping to yourself won't put eyes on your project. But I hear you. You're talking about organic growth, not the growth of having a group of friends, but instead the a growth of people finding and becoming interested in the book itself. And that can happen over time. The subscribers to my YouTube channel, for example, happen very slowly. And I think that showed an actual number of people who are interested in the show. If I got a whole bunch up front, it wouldn't have been as meaningful and I wouldn't have learned as much from it. So, yeah, that's a good point. That maybe had I not joined any kind of group and instead went to the crowdfunding campaigns that, or sorry, the crowdfunding platforms that had the larger audiences, it might have made a difference. But I don't know. I think that would have been a tough road to hoe because you've got so many hats that you have to wear as a comic book creator. You think, well, I can do this because I can write, or maybe I can do this because I can draw. But are you also a marketer? Are you also a businessman? Are you also, I mean, there's so many other things that you have to do. How organized are you when you've got 100 people who back your book? When it comes time for fulfillment, that's a big project. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's a really big, and it's an investment in time and effort. And then there's things like the advertising. You were talking earlier about, sending out an email once a week. That takes some discipline, right? To do that kind of thing. So
By the way, I'm a marketer and I know this. I know how to do this, understand the necessity of doing it. Absolutely terrible at it. I pay for an email service. I hardly ever use it. Someone's up, time to write a new email. Do I really have to? Am I trying to promote it? I'm the worst at it, and I know how important it is. But like, was kind of going along with what you were saying. If you can want to pay for advertising on Google, that advertising is good as long as you keep throwing money at Google to do the damn advertising. The minute that you stop doing this, they're paying. And by the way, unless you're selling really high ticket items, it doesn't always work out the best because it gets very expensive to just continue throwing that over there. And what's your ROI on like the lifetime value of a new client? Who knows? You're paying $5 a person to get over there and look at you. Well, unless everybody's buying a copy of the book, you're not going to live that down. So there's that frustrating element of it. It's kind of like, to me, it's analogous to the idea of, yeah, you can take the shortcut to get the people to like the CG element, but they stop coming by and they go away just as quickly as they came because it's a shortcut. Marketing, when I talk to anyone, I bring them on as a client or I do work for them, it's like, understand this takes time. This is just, even if you were to just start working SEO on a website, you may not see anything happen for 6 months just because the way Google's algorithm works. It's got to kind of find a place for you by testing different waters. 6 months that it might take to make that work. All marketing is a long-term thing. It gets, can I stick around for 2 years to see the fruit of doing all of these things and putting the time in? And one of the things, so my background, I say it all the time, I'm from music. The one thing having talked to professional musicians and people that do that for a living, is that the people that are successful are the ones that can sit around and take forever to do it. Tyler Draw and Doc had a big thing where people get pissed at him because he's like, oh, you never really cared because you're stepping back to do family life over comics. You never really mean anything. He's like, yeah, it did. But then at a certain point, I have to realize it's really important in life and taking care of my family. I'm more than happy to make comics be a hobby as long as I'm doing what I need to be doing for real life. Some of us don't always find. He's one of those ones that maybe doesn't make it all the way, and that's okay. That's why you get a lot of starving musicians in their 20s that will do anything to make it. I got wife and kid. I can't do the same things I could have done when I was 20. I can't sleep in a van with 4 guys living on ramen. As Henry Rollins told you, he was talking about knowing how many calories were in a Snickers bar and divvying it up for what the guy's got in a day. It's not where I'm at. So, is there like one last thing you want to tell everybody before you go? And then after that, tell them where they can go look you up, where they can find you.
So, yes, I think that crowdfunding is a good start. In some instances, it's good to get people interested in your books, but then you really need to start thinking about some other strategies. I do have some other things that I'm hoping to do in the next year that doesn't necessarily require hiring artists and colorists and letterers and editors because I'm hashtag just a writer. So, I've got to get all of those other creatives involved. But I'm going to take a look at some other avenues of distribution and other ways to get eyes on the projects. So in the meantime, I do have a live campaign. It's just got 7 days though. So what I'd really rather point you to is my website, which is dojokuncomics.com/Dojo Kun Comics. And on it are all the comics books that I've been publishing over the course of the last 10 years, many of which are available print on demand. And soon I'll have my comics available on Amazon and at Walmart.com. Hopefully those will be passive income and get many more eyes on the project. And maybe that is the kind of organic growth that you were alluding to a little while ago.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Do you fancy yourself the next Tolkien, Lewis, or Barker? Maybe you just have something subversive to say. Hopefully this podcast is helping you. But maybe your ambitions are just a little bigger than you can handle on your own. Head over to ironeadsmarketing.com and let Nicky P help ensure your book doesn't release to nobody.